Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Tonight we're going to start out with a nice Irish Catholic boy from Burlington, Wisconsin, Ed Garvey, who died recently at the age of 76. Ed Garvey was the head of the National Football League Players Association from 1971 to 1983. He led the players through 2 strikes, and he caught a lot of grief, but he made a lot of advances for players in the National Football League. Here's Madison Television on Ed Garvey.
Ed Garvey was the kind of guy you just enjoyed being around because he was incredibly smart, very funny, seemingly unafraid of anything or anyone, with a huge heart. He was talk and action, lots of action, usually on behalf of those whose voices were too easily overlooked by those with more power or money or influence. We hold his wife Betty, his family, and so many friends in our hearts, our sad hearts.
I met Ed Garvey once. He was a very charming guy. My friend Jim Munson went to law school with him in Madison. My friend Mark Murphy worked under him in the Players Association. They both said he was a brilliant guy, a very, very nice guy, and a compassionate person. Here's a tribute to him from the NFL Players Association.
John Mackey found this young attorney at the time, and he felt that this would be the person to really bring us into the 20th century as far as the union, to organize us, to pull us together. This man has to be the most controversial figure in the U.S. I really believe that you need certain leaders for a certain period of time in history.
When Ed had this job, the philosophical idea that as a player you should be treated like a worker in America was something that few people could even wrap their heads around. We refused to be treated like chattel. We refused to be treated like fungible, discardable entities. And that was something that shook the core of the owners. They hated Ed, not so much because he was smarter than they were.
Al Davis, the genius.
And he was funny.
I hear it all the time. Pays well, takes misfits. So most of you are thinking, I may have a chance.
They hated Ed because he challenged their quote-unquote right to own men.
So the Tex Schramm called his team captains in and said, Ed Garvey's a racist. And the player asked, gee, I find that hard to believe. Tex says, that's the point. He hates whites. He probably thought Marcus Garvey was my grandfather, but whatever.
Ed had the luxury of pushing the union philosophically towards issues that he called freedom issues.
Talk to Calvin Hill, player rep for Dallas Cowboys. Dangerous position. Did something awful. Raised the question with the Dallas Cowboy management why it was that the white players got cars for nothing from the dealers, but the black players didn't. And Calvin Hill finished his career with a different team.
To take advantage of the rising tide of civil rights.
The National Football League still says there's a difference between blacks and whites. Blacks are good on the field. They're not so good off the field. And anyone who has watched this league for all these years, who says there are no qualified blacks to be head coaches and offensive coordinators and general managers and owners of teams, does not deserve to be commissioner of the National Football League in 1987.
When I took this job, obviously, Gene wasn't here. The only person that I could ask questions to, the only person that I could confide with, the only person who understood what it was like to have this job was Ed. And for the rest of my life, I'll never be able to repay that debt.
In his life, Ed Garvey lost a lot of fights, but one thing about him was he never stopped fighting for his causes. Well, we're going to move on to our feature now. Bill Paxton, who died recently at the age of 61, another nice Catholic boy from Fort Worth, Texas. Bill Paxton was in some of the most popular movies of our generation, including Terminator, Twister, Apollo 13, and Titanic. He was also an Emmy-nominated actor for the HBO series Big Love. Here's a New York Times report on Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton will be remembered as one of those nice guys who's in good films that you can watch with your family. In Twister, he's just a generally affable and friendly storm chaser who all he wants to do is run after tornadoes and be in love with Helen Hunt. And that's a perfectly fun thing to watch on screen. In Titanic, he's the excitable treasure hunter who brings Rose back to the wreck of the ocean liner. In Apollo 13, he's one of the three men, along with Tom Hanks and Kevin Bacon, who are stuck orbiting the Earth in their failed attempt to land on the moon.
Hold on.
For his acting role in Big Love, which aired from 2006 to 2011 on HBO, he was nominated for 3 Golden Globes for acting. He never won.
This is Margene.
One year he was up against John Hamm for Mad Men. Another year he was up against Hugh Laurie for House. And it was just these couple of years with a powerhouse collection of actors, and Bill Paxton was constantly the runner-up but never managed to take home the Golden Globe. The word that I think applies best to Bill Paxton is affable. It describes both him and the characters that he played.
Hey, neighbor. Happy Easter. Same to you, Bill.
Well, rather than talk about Bill Paxton's movie career, I'm going to focus on the thing that fascinated me the most because he's about my age. As I said, he was from Fort Worth, and Fort Worth was where John Kennedy was on Thursday night, November 21st, 1963, and on the morning of November 22nd, 1963. And here's Bill Paxton to tell his story of those 2 days.
Well, on November of 1963, I was 8.5 years old. I remember staying up late on the Thursday night, the 21st, and looking with my brother's telescope down. We lived off of Indian Creek Drive, and we could see cars well. And I remember with my brother's telescope, we could see the presidential seal. And my dad said, "Get in the car. Come on, we're going to go see the motorcade go by." And I said, "Well, we're not dressed." It was about after 11 o'clock. And he said, "That's okay. Just grab a robe and jump in the car." We jumped in my dad's Oldsmobile, and we drove down to where Westover Road comes out of Roaring Springs Road. And we sat there and we saw the whole motorcade go by. Well, the next morning, my brother Bob, who's the reason I was even there, he was 11, he woke my dad up and said, you promised to take us to see the President Kennedy. And my dad looked out the window, saw it was kind of a drizzly morning, and thought, God, he's going to have these 2 boys in a crowd. He liked Kennedy. He thought it might be a bit of a hassle. And my brother used the 2 words you never want to, you promised. So he said, get your brother dressed. And we drove down. It was about a 10-minute drive down. And we parked, I'd say about 6 blocks away. And we walked in and we became part of a crowd of about 4,000 to 5,000 people. We were probably standing around the crowd for about 20 minutes. When here comes President Kennedy with Johnson and Connally and Jim Wright and Senator Yarborough. And they got up on what was I didn't know it at the time. It was a flatbed truck they'd put bunting on, and the presidential seal there and the lectern. And it was amazing to see President Kennedy because, God, I had mostly seen him on television in black and white, and there he was in living color, and I couldn't believe how red his hair was. A navy suit on, and he seemed in very good spirits. He made a joke about his wife, Jackie, not being there, but of course she took a little longer to get ready in the morning, but she looked a lot better. And it was I remember just a real euphoric crowd. I was a bit young to really understand later the consequences of the event. I couldn't believe he had been killed. I came in off the recess playground. I was going to St. Alice, Catholic school off of Camp Bowie. And I remember the nuns were all crying, and they told us to put our heads down on the desks. And then news came through on the radio that he had died. I had never been to the 6th Floor Museum. At that time, it was about 20 years old. And I decided to go over there. I was staying at the W Hotel, which is that west side of Dallas. It's kind of built up now. And I had always wanted to go over there. I'd been by Dealey Plaza many times as a boy growing up. And I put on a baseball cap, and I went over there, and I went through, and the first thing I saw was a still from the speech in Fort Worth in the parking lot of the Hotel Texas. And the next day I called the curator, Gary Mack, and I got him on the phone. He knew who I was. I said, I was in that crowd. I said, do you have any pictures from the front? He was kind of cajoling me a bit. And then later that afternoon they called me. They said, we found some images, and it was from a newsreel, 16-millimeter newsreel. I forget the man who shot it, a guy named Cooper, I believe. And you can see me in a couple of moments there, cuts from the president to the crowd.
It's a great story, and the pictures back him up. If you weren't around back then, it's hard to imagine it. Well, we're going to close tonight with this.
What you are witnessing is real. The participants are not actors. They are actual litigants with a case pending in a California municipal court. Both parties have agreed to dismiss their court cases and have their dispute settled here in our forum, the People's Court.
I'm Doug Llewellyn, and welcome to the People's Court. So let's find out more of the details in this war between the horror film producers as the litigants now talk to Judge Wapner.
I know you've all been sworn. I've read your complaint, gentlemen.
Well, that was the People's Court, and the judge in the People's Court was Judge Joseph Wapner, who died recently at the age of 97. He was a nice Jewish boy from L.A. He went to USC and USC Law School. He won a Purple Heart during World War II, and he was a real-life judge who moved to be a television judge in the forerunner of today's television courtroom dramas. He presided in over 2,300 shows from 1981 to 1993. Here is Indiana Television on Judge Wapner.
The judge who presided over the original People's Court has died at the age of 97. Joseph Wapner was on that reality courtroom show from 1981 to 1993 after retiring from the bench. Before the show, he served for 20 years in Los Angeles courtrooms, including its Superior Court, the largest court in the country. He received a star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame back in 2009, with the show's current host at his side.
One of my favorite Judge Wapner appearances was when Johnny Carson had him on The Tonight Show to mediate a made-up dispute between him and David Letterman.
You seem to feel that I committed some kind of a heinous crime here, and that some damages are due you. And I thought the only way to really solve this was to reach a just decision. We agreed to ask a retired municipal and Superior Court judge, who has been the presiding judge for 5 years on the People's Court. Would you welcome, please, Judge Joseph Wapner.
Gentlemen, since this is an arbitration, I'm going to have to ask you to be sworn, if you don't mind.
No, not at all, sir.
You and each of you do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in these proceedings shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
More or less, sir. Yes, sir.
It better be more.
Yes, sir. All right, sir. Do I begin, Judge? What happens, sir?
You wait for me, Mr. Levin.
Oh, yeah.
As famous as Judge Wapner was, what made him more famous was the 1988 movie Rain Man, starring Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman. And Dustin Hoffman wins an Academy Award for his performance as the autistic Raymond who has to watch the People's Court. He keeps track of when it's going to be on and keeps saying things like 4 minutes to Wapner. Here's a snip from the movie where Tom Cruise cajoles a woman into letting Raymond watch Judge Wapner.
Just put your hands down. Don't walk alone.
4 minutes to
Just
Wapner.
shut up, Raymond. Just shut up and stand there.
Yeah.
That's it. Oh, boy. That's it. You blew it. You don't get to see your program. It's finished.
1 minute to Wapner.
1 minute to Wapner. 1 minute to Wapner. 1 minute to Wapner. I had you in there, Ray. You were in there. Defendant, plaintiff, you had it all. They are in there making legal history, Ray. Legal history.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
What is going on out here?
I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm very sorry about that. That man right there is my brother. And if he doesn't get to watch People's Court in about 30 seconds, he's going to throw a fit right here in your porch. And you can help me, or you can stand there and watch it happen.
We like to watch cartoons. You think he'd settle for that?
And she sees an identical twin. True, he didn't have a shirt on, the other one did, but they sure look alike to me.
He obviously didn't settle for cartoons. Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. And since we're talking about Rain Man and it had a wonderful score, I thought as a closing tribute to Judge Wapner, we'd play the best song from that score. It's written by the greatest American composer of all, George Gershwin, lyrics by his brother in 1937, and it was introduced in the movie Shall We Dance? It's sung by Fred Astaire to who else? Ginger Rogers. The song is, of course, They Can't Take That Away From Me. So this is for you, Judge Wapner.
People's Court sort of had a pop culture shot in the arm for the movie Rain Man.
Ah, yes.
What was your reaction to that?
Well, who wouldn't love it? I mean, I was told, and this is hearsay, but I was told that Dustin Hoffman was the one who put me in the movie because he watched the show religiously. And so he thought that would be a good addition to the movie. I think that I was paid the magnificent sum of about $500 for doing it. But I had a feeling he was going to get the Academy Award for it, and I wrote a letter to him telling him that I would love to be there when he got the award. And unfortunately, I think some secretary got a hold of it, my letter, and didn't answer it. And so I didn't go to see him getting the award.
Do people bring that up to you, that movie?
Constantly. I finally bought a tape of the movie, so I have it in my library. Grandkids can see it.
The way you wear your hair, the way you sip your tea, the memory of all that. Oh no, they can't take that away from me. The way your smile just beams, the way you haunt my dreams. No, no, they can't take that away from me.